So I would like to continue with my second target language, which is Chinese. I want to do a quick assessment on my Chinese skills, and this time I want to do it together with the goals, so it would be a little bit quicker than when I was talking about my Korean goals. So let's start with my Chinese listening skills. So if I watch a drama and it's a normal drama with a normal plot, I can basically understand over 90 or over 95%. But if I would like to watch something connected with medicine or law or let's say business or marketing, I cannot understand a lot of vocabulary because I'm not familiar with that vocabulary and I'm not familiar with the concepts they're speaking about. So that's the main issue when it comes to more complicated topics like medicine or law or others that I cannot think of right now, but you probably know what I'm talking about. So basically that's how I know that there are a lot of areas in more advanced Chinese that I'm not confident listening to or talking about, and I would like to improve on them. And I would like to get my Chinese listening level to as close to natives as possible. And one thing that I would like to do to improve on these skills is basically watching more stuff on more complicated and advanced issues and watching some news and maybe some documentaries about the certain topics. But I don't really have like a detailed plan for this for now. Maybe I will do some more detailed plan along the way of learning Chinese in this year, but for now it's just like a rough idea what I would like to do with my Chinese listening and with my Chinese reading and skills in general. There is actually another one thing that makes Chinese listening harder than a lot of other languages, and for me it's the usage of Chengyu and Siziciyu, which are basically the Chinese idioms. And Chinese people or Chinese speaking people really love using a lot of idioms in their daily communication, in the dramas and even in the news, and definitely in some written language also. So it's kind of a huge part of learning Chinese, and although I learned some Chinese Chengyu or Siziciyu some time ago, like a few years ago, like maybe 8 or 9 years ago and 10 years ago, but I don't remember most of them, and it's basically easier to remember the Siziciyu, which are like this 4-syllable idioms or let's say language structures, and it's much harder to remember Chengyu, which are connected with some stories in traditional Chinese culture. I believe that it takes much more to understand Chengyu than to learn Siziciyu. And I think it's kind of hard to do if you are not familiar with Chinese culture, because it basically requires much more time to get the grasp of the actual meaning of Chengyu. So I will definitely make some videos about learning Chengyu and the methods that you could use to memorize them in a better way. But for now I just wanted to let you know that and this year one of my goals will be working on Chengyu and Siziciyu. So if you are interested in the challenge of learning Chengyu and Siziciyu this year, or you are interested in learning Chinese or other languages in general, you just need to follow the channel, and I hope that I can give you some motivation to learn certain parts of the language, like for example Chinese idioms. So moving on to the next skill, which is reading. I would say that my reading skills in Chinese deteriorated a lot, and honestly, I'm not proud of this because, like 8 or 9 years ago, my Chinese reading skills were pretty good and were kind of similar as my listening and speaking skills, and were all at about B2 to C1-ish level. And how do I know exactly how are my Chinese reading skills if I haven't read for such a long time? Basically, I started to learn or review the book that I bought back in China, and it's Korean textbook, but it was published in China, and that's why it has translations of dialogues and some text in Chinese. And I thought that, like maybe to ease my way back into Korean and Chinese altogether, I can use these books that I bought back in China a few years ago. And I started to, like go through Korean and Chinese altogether. And I realized that my Korean is far better than my Chinese in terms of reading, because it was really difficult for me to read Chinese characters fluently right now. So I've already finished the first book and I will be going through the second book. I will probably make a video about studying from this book, and I would like to show you some techniques that I'm using to remember the lessons better, or like my ways of reviewing the stuff that I've already learned before. But you will be able to see how using a bilingual book can help you ease into some languages, like let's say in this case Korean and Chinese all together. And you will also see what is the difference between my Korean reading and Chinese reading, because I think the difference is huge. But it's not something that I cannot work on. So like I have 1 year to work on this skill again. So no worries. I'm definitely gonna jail. But for now, I basically wanted to tell you that I realized that my reading skills in Chinese deteriorated so much. What's the main issue? So basically, when you read Chinese characters, they are all associated with certain sounds. And when you learn Chinese characters, you basically learn it with sounds. You learn to pronounce them, you learn the meaning and the pronunciation. But since Chinese characters are pictograms, which basically depict some ideas just within the character itself, they don't really need the sound attached to it for you to be able to recognize the meaning of the character. That's what is really problematic for me right now, because when I'm reading, I realize when I see certain characters, I get the meaning, I can assume the meaning of the characters, but I don't remember the pronunciation. And it's a huge setback for me, because when I learn a language, I do it because I love the sound of the language. And for Chinese, when the sound is also connected with tones, if you only remember the meaning and you don't remember the sound of the character, it's like something feels incomplete, at least for me. I don't know what are your thoughts on this, but for me it's really important to connect the language with its sounds and not only the written form. One issue is that I basically know these characters, but don't know their pinyin, like the pronunciation. And the other thing is that I remember the pronunciation, but not all. So let's say I don't remember the tones. So I remember the syllables which are connected with certain characters, but I can't remember the tones, because for me learning characters was always associated with learning tones. And if I didn't learn the tones properly at the time of learning certain characters, I may not be able to recall them that quickly if I didn't see them or didn't hear the words for certain amount of time. That's what I will have to work on. Like, I will have to work on the characters that I recognize but don't know the meaning, or don't know the pronunciation, or I'm unsure of the meaning, or basically I just don't know the tones. So this is a huge part of my Chinese learning project for this year, improving on my tones and improving on reading aloud and reading more fluently, like in my mind. And you would say, like, why am I talking about tones when I'm talking about reading? Like, you know, I can basically read even not knowing the tones, and, you know, like, I can just read in my mind and still get the meaning of the text. And yes, it's very true. But the problem is that for me, the tones and the pronunciation are so connected with the characters, or let's say should be connected with the characters, and I cannot separate them, and I shouldn't separate them. I don't really think anyone should separate the characters from the pronunciation. So even if I'm reading silently in my mind, I will visualize how the language should sound. And basically that's why reading, especially in Chinese, which is a tonal language, is strictly connected with speaking and of course listening. But you know, like, you cannot separate those skills while learning Chinese. You cannot just learn one well and, you know, then forget about others. So there's so much to improve in my Chinese right now, and I'm gonna work on it hard. So I hope that in 1 year time we can all see some progress. And now let's jump to the speaking category. And for speaking, I would like to say that I was somewhere at C1 level while speaking Chinese, and it was also a few years ago, at least, like, I would say 7 years ago, or maybe even more. For now, I'm also ashamed to say this, but I would say that I'm somewhere around B1 level in terms of speaking. And why is that? Of course, because I didn't really speak a lot in Chinese. I didn't get a lot of chances to speak in Chinese for all these years. You know, I've got some, and I will tell you more about it in some videos that I will make about Chinese learning. But basically, I didn't speak a lot in Chinese for quite some time. And that's why my speaking skills deteriorated along with my reading skills. So you're probably wondering, if I was at C1 level once, why would I say that my level of Chinese speaking is B1 right now? So it's like 2 levels lower. I still can have kind of a fluent conversation with Chinese speaking people, but if I had to talk about more complicated topics and issues, I wouldn't be able to, because I just don't remember the vocabulary. This vocabulary that I learned is somewhere, like, it's somehow dormant in my mind, somewhere in my brain. and it's waiting for me to use it, but I cannot recall it just like that. Because it's just too difficult to get to this part of your mind on your own when you don't do any exercises. And let's say if I listen to some podcasts right now that are about more complicated topics or issues, I would regain this vocabulary in some time, and in some time I would be able to access it. But for now, it's like I'm still at the phase of remembering the easier things in Chinese and the easier, like a normal day-to-day life vocab. So basically, there's still a long way to go for me in terms of my Chinese speaking and getting it to a better level. But as you probably already noticed, my main goal for Chinese this year is basically getting back to the level that I was before, and if possible surpassing it, and like this time doing it better and doing it more profoundly. Like I would be really happy with regaining C1 level in listening, speaking and reading. And when it comes to the last category, which is writing, I would say there are two different things when it comes to writing, and I would basically have two different levels when it comes to writing. So if I said about writing by hand, I don't even know if I would pass a exam for like A1 level or A2 level. I'm not even sure about that, because I haven't written Chinese characters for such a long time. It's also stored somewhere in my brain, but I didn't access this part of my knowledge and my skills in such a long time that I will certainly need some time to remember. And this is also one of these things that I kind of would like to work on this year, because I kind of liked writing the Chinese characters by hand, but while learning Chinese and getting to a higher level, we kind of stopped using handwriting and we started to type a lot on the computer. So basically, this is the method that I've been using for all these years. Even if I contacted some friends and wrote to them in Chinese, I basically typed and didn't handwrite, like obviously. So my typing skills are pretty okay. I would say maybe a little bit rusty, like maybe I'm not so super quick in typing in Chinese as I was before, but it's okay. And for handwriting, it's completely different story. And as I said, I'm not even sure if I would pass A1 written exam in Chinese characters. But there is another part of writing also, which is basically like essay writing or some short summaries writing and so on and so on. I could use typing for writing an essay. And I think that right now I could probably write somewhere around B1 level in Chinese, but not like a very strong B1 level. And I used to write at strong B2 level, maybe even C1 level. For writing, basically same as Korean, I probably would like to get to a B2 level of writing again. And like if I had some time for research, I could most certainly write on a B2 or even C1 level in Chinese without any further problems. I was pretty confident about my Chinese writing when I was good at Chinese. So So I think that regaining the skills wouldn't be as difficult. I've said before that I'm basically not a person who enjoys writing in other languages as much as other skills that you are gaining, because I really think that you won't be able, or it would be very, very hard to match the native speaker's level in writing. And when I'm talking about the native speaker level of writing, I'm not talking about some famous authors writing or so on. I'm just talking about the regular people writing skills in a native language. So this is all for my Chinese goals, and I will most certainly put a video of me speaking Chinese so you can check it out.